Everyone's aware that pirates were fierce fighters, but their biggest wins came from cleverness, not strength. A tiny pirate crew could sink a vessel 3 times their size, but only if they found the right moment. Drop the Hollywood cliches. Pirates weren't merely reckless raiders ambushing any passing ship. They were strategic hunters who honed a complex method for choosing their targets, particularly when pursuing vessels much larger than their own. The key to their success was understanding ship behavior as the first step in picking the right target. Pirates would set up themselves at key spots along busy trade routes, often hiding behind tiny islands or within hidden coves. From these lookout points, they'd watch dozens of ships each day, searching for signs of weakness or opportunity. A ship sitting high in the water usually signaled it was low on supplies. If the sails were patched or the hull bore fresh repairs, it indicated the vessel had already encountered trouble at sea. The easiest targets were often the lagging ones. As big merchant convoys moved along familiar shipping routes, pirates kept an eye out for ships that lagged or drifted away from the group. These lone vessels became prime targets, particularly if they were having trouble keeping up. A merchant captain recorded in his log that we fell 2 hours behind the convoy because of a damaged rudder. That delay cost us dearly. The pirates had an uncanny grasp of trade routes and schedules. They knew precisely when ships from various trading companies would be most laden with cargo. For example, Spanish treasure galleons usually carried their heaviest loads during summer, whereas East India Company ships often transported their most valuable cargoes in early spring. This information allowed pirates to choose the perfect vantage point at the right moment. Conditions clearly influenced how targets were chosen. Following intense storms, pirates frequently looked for ships that had drifted away from their convoys or sustained damage from the rough seas. These vessels, often in need of help, were much easier to approach. Certain pirate crews even monitored seasonal storm patterns to anticipate where wrecked ships might be located. The vessel's size was less important than its condition and crew. Pirates carefully observed how well a ship was cared for and how its crew acted. A big ship with a chaotic crew was usually an easier mark than a smaller, more organized vessel. They looked for obvious clues: sloppy sail adjustments, decks in disrepair, or irregular watch shifts. Such details hinted at a crew that might be easier to overpower. A key part of choosing targets was evaluating the crew's probable morale. It was understood that a crew's willingness to fight often related to how long their voyage had been. Ships approaching the end of extended journeys usually had exhausted crews, making them more prone to surrender without putting up a strong defense. They would watch for clues like slow sail adjustments or little movement on deck, indicating a weary crew. Take the infamous pirate Benjamin Hornigold as an example. He once said his best target was a wealthy ship at the end of a long journey, run by a crew more eager to get home than to defend their cargo. He had a surprisingly high success rate. Out of the 28 ships he aimed at over 2 years, 24 surrendered easily with little resistance. The time of day also played a role in his choices. Pirates tended to strike during certain hours when they knew crew vigilance would be at its lowest. Dawn assaults proved especially effective, striking crews during ship transitions when watchfulness was often lower. But pinpointing the ideal target was only the start. The real difficulty was in what happened afterward. Their biggest challenge now is approaching close enough to strike without alarming their prey and causing it to flee. This is where pirates really cemented their reputation as experts in trickery. They didn't just sail in charging and waving black flags, they were much more clever than that. The false flag tactic was their go-to move. Pirates stored a variety of different flags in their hold, prepared to impersonate any country's merchant ship. A French merchant vessel would be far more inclined to allow what appeared to be a fellow French trader to approach. According to reports, the clever pirate Captain Charles Vane kept 17 different national flags on his ship. He would switch them out as often as a child changes costumes on Halloween, adopting whichever nationality was most helpful against each target, though flags were only the start. Pirates pulled out all the stops with their disguises. They'd hide extra guns under canvas, stash their cutlasses below deck, and even dress their crew in merchant sailor attire. Some crews became so skilled at fooling others that they could sail right up to their target while hosting a pretend tea party on deck, with crew members acting like affluent passengers. The terrain was a key factor in their ambushes. Pirates were familiar with every secret cave and dead end in their area. They'd lurk behind tiny islands, lying in wait for passing ships. The landscape surrounding the Caribbean islands was ideal for these tactics. There were plenty of tiny caves and inlets where a pirate ship could hide out of sight until the very last second. One of my favorite historical stories is from a merchant captain's log. He rounded the point near Nassau, only to discover a pirate vessel just waiting there. They probably stayed concealed for days, lurking like a spider in its web. The wounded bird ploy was another smart move, pirates acting as if their ship was in trouble, with torn sails, sending out distress signals, and crew members flailing wildly to attract attention. Gentle merchant captains would often come forward to seek help, only to find themselves completely encircled by pirates who were now well armed and in excellent shape. It was like a maritime version of playing dead, and surprisingly, it often worked. Some pirates even took deception to astonishing extremes. In 1718, there's a recorded incident where a pirate crew divided into two ships. One pretended to be a merchant vessel under attack by pirates, while the other ship secretly followed. When the target ships came to assist the supposed merchant, both pirate ships suddenly turned on them. Now that's a classic double cross. The really sneaky part is that pirates would sometimes spend weeks building their traps. They'd establish fake trading posts on small islands, complete with what looked like legitimate business operations. Passing ships would stop to trade, only to discover too late that the entire setup was fake. One infamous pirate, Henry Morgan, once captured an entire Spanish fort and used it as a base to lure in passing ships for nearly a month before anyone caught on. Pirates sometimes use music as part of their traps. They'd play popular sea shanties and merchant sailing songs, making their ships sound like a friendly vessel having a good time. Nothing says definitely not pirates like a crew singing "What Shall We Do with the Drunken Sailor" at full volume. But perhaps the most brilliant part of pirate deception was their use of information. They'd interrogate captured sailors about shipping signals, passwords, and protocols, building up a detailed database of how legitimate ships communicated with each other. By the time they went after their next target, they could perfectly mimic the behavior of whatever type of ship they were pretending to be. Of course, deception was just one card in the pirate's hand, and like any good card player, they always had an ace up their sleeve. This greatest weapon wasn't their cannons or cutlasses, it was their ship's speed. Their vessels were specifically chosen or modified for quickness. They'd strip away heavy decorations, reduce the number of cannon, and even reshape their hulls to cut through water faster. One captured pirate ship, the Adventure Prize, was found to have had its entire stern cabin removed just to make it lighter and faster. You'd be amazed how much thought pirates put into the winds and currents. They'd position themselves upwind of their target, giving them control over the engagement. That way they could zoom in for a quick hit and retreat before the bigger ship could turn its broadside cannons. Some clever pirates even used the target ship's own wake to gain extra speed, riding the displacement wave like a surfer. A detail most people don't know is that pirates rarely aim to sink ships. That would be like blowing up a bank vault. You'd destroy the very thing you're trying to steal. Instead, they aimed for the parts that would cripple the ship's movement. The rudder was a favorite target. One solid hit there, and even the biggest ship would start spinning like a broken compass. The real art was in the coordinated attack patterns. Pirates would weave back and forth across their target's stern, staying in the blind spot where the big ship's guns couldn't reach. They called this raking the stern. Though personally, I think death by 1,000 paper cuts would have been more accurate. Each pass would tear up the ship's controls, sails, and crew morale. Some of the most successful pirates used what they called the wasp attack. They dart in close, fire a few shots, and zip away before the larger ship could respond. After a few passes, they'd attack from a different angle, keeping the defender guessing. The big ship's crew would be running from one side to another, never knowing where the next hit would come from. One Spanish captain's log complained, "These devils never stay still long enough to fight properly." Pirates would also time their attacks for when the wind and waves would work against their larger opponents. A big ship rolling in heavy seas couldn't aim its guns properly, while the smaller pirate vessels could bob and weave through the waves. During one famous chase in 1718, a pirate sloop managed to escape a Royal Navy warship by sailing straight into a squall that the larger ship couldn't risk entering. The clever part was how pirates used psychology in their maneuvers. They knew that a ship's crew would focus on the most obvious threat, so they'd often attack in pairs. While the big ship was dealing with one pirate vessel in front, another would sneak up from behind. By the time the target realized what was happening, it was too late to reposition their guns. Pirates sometimes used their superior maneuverability just to wear out their opponents. They'd keep a larger ship turning and adjusting course for hours, knowing that working the sails on a big vessel was exhausting. By the time they finally moved in close, the defender's crew would be. Because once pirates had their target pinned down and exhausted, that's when the real terror began. A tired ship was a vulnerable ship, and pirates had turned boarding into a ruthless science. Their methods weren't random. Every move was calculated to make their small numbers count. Rappelling hooks led the charge. Pirates kept dozens of these nasty little tools ready, each one attached to strong hemp ropes. The most skilled pirates could throw these hooks with scary accuracy, often landing them on the first try. One recovered pirate ship had over 30 different types of grappling hooks, each designed for a specific purpose, from latching onto railings to snagging rigging. The first wave usually wasn't the fighters, it was the smoke makers. The smoke wouldn't just blind the defenders, it would make them cough and choke too. In the logbook of a Dutch merchant ship captured in 1718, the captain wrote, "The devil sent their foul smoke first, and by the time we could see again, they were already among us." Pirates struck from several directions at once. While the main crew assaulted the sides, smaller teams covertly boarded from the bow and stern. The defenders couldn't figure out where to concentrate their fire. One pirate crew even trained their ship's monkey to carry a tiny rope over to the target vessel. Probably the earliest example of a commando monkey in history. Pirates intentionally aimed to appear as intimidating as possible when boarding. They blackened their faces with powder, tied lit fuses into their beards, and made fierce, terrifying sounds to intimidate. A captured sailor described how the pirates shrieked like banshees and appeared like demons. They joked about going overboard with dress-up day at work. The quickest boarding attempts lasted under 3 minutes. Speed was everything. Pirates understood that dragging out a battle wasn't in their favor. They trained their boarding techniques like a lethal dance, with everyone knowing precisely where to be and what to do. The renowned pirate Bartholomew Roberts had his crew rehearse boarding maneuvers every Sunday, which, I suppose, counts as pirate-style team building. During boarding, historians were selected for their skill in tight space combat. Pirates favored short swords and pistols over longer weapons that might snag on the rigging. They would often carry several loaded pistols, firing one at a time, then using the empty ones as clubs. Reloading dragged on too long during the chaos of battle. The fastest was a pirate called Henry Johnson, known for somehow always carrying 6 loaded pistols into each clash. The cleverest pirates always went after the officers first. Eliminating the leaders usually made the rest of the crew lose their fighting spirit pretty quickly. They would recognize officers by their attire and mannerisms, sometimes having researched their targets for days ahead of the assault. One resourceful pirate crew even maintained a stash of stolen officer uniforms to better identify what commanding sailors appeared like. The best boarding teams often operated in groups of 3, one to engage in combat, another to watch their rear, and a third to gather intel on cargo. While the skirmish raged on deck, these search groups would make a beeline for the captain's quarters, hunting for maps, cargo logs, and sailing plans. Often, this information mattered more than the cargo they seized. It guided their future assaults, but capturing a ship was just the start. The real test came after the fight, showing just how sharp the pirates' planning skills truly were. Once the battle was over, the true work started. Pirates weren't just about snatching shiny things and fleeing. They had a pretty advanced system for securing and handling their loot. It might surprise you to know that many successful pirate crews function more like a smooth-running business than a wild bunch of brigands. First things first? Locking down the ship. Pirates would quickly isolate the crew they took, often pushing them below deck with guards. The officers would be kept apart too, not just to stop them from planning anything, but because they held all the ship's secrets. The Spanish captain's ransom note mentioned that the pirates were already aware of his concealed gold before they even questioned him. The best crews could plunder a merchant ship of its valuables in less than 2 hours. They operated in specialized groups. Some pirates focused solely on hunting for hidden compartments in ships, while others were skilled at swiftly transferring cargo from one vessel to another. They also maintained thorough records of everything they seized. It wasn't just about tracking the treasure. These records revealed which ports would purchase what goods. A recovered pirate ledger from 1719 shows they even monitored market prices across various ports. Who would have thought pirates were such meticulous accountants? Clever pirates always prioritized grabbing the navigation gear first. Charts, compasses, and especially detailed maps could sometimes be more valuable than gold. They'd also seize any letters or documents they came across, not for ransom, but to gather intelligence on other possible targets. One sharp crew even managed to create an entire network by piecing together information from intercepted ships' mail. The most valuable things weren't always what you'd think. Pirates loved treasure like gold and silver, but they got just as excited over practical gear. Freshwater, medical supplies, and spare parts for their ships were priceless on the open sea. They'd even take the cook if he was skilled. Many renowned pirate crews had chefs they picked up from ships they seized. Surprisingly, the most remarkable thing about pirate loot was how rarely they harmed the vessels they captured. Contrary to what movies often show, pirates didn't always abandon their captured ships. They relied on keeping their prizes in good shape, so they could sell them, use them as spare vessels, or even replace their current flagship if the captured ship was superior. A pirate crew once made headlines by upgrading their ships 3 times in just a month, each time trading up to a larger, more impressive vessel. Over time, they devised clever methods for uncovering hidden treasures. One trick involved measuring the hold's depth against the waterline to detect false floors. Some crews kept cats aboard not only to catch rats but because these cats often looked for hiding places where scared sailors had secreted valuables. A pirate captain even proudly documented his treasure hunting feline in his logbook. The most successful pirates knew that knowledge was just as valuable. They questioned their crew about the movements of other ships, trading routes, and vulnerabilities in defenses. Even a sailor's gossip about a valuable cargo heading from Jamaica could sometimes be worth more than anything hidden in the hold. Certain pirate captains became so skilled at gathering intelligence that they could forecast the whereabouts of important targets months ahead. Their organization allowed for swift plundering. Pirates employed color-coded flags to communicate what they had discovered. For weapons, yellow indicated food, while black signified valuable cargo. This setup allowed them to communicate smoothly between ships without shouting and alerting nearby vessels. They also had distinct signals for various kinds of resistance, giving other pirates a heads-up on what to anticipate if they captured the target. But behind their knack for seizing treasure, pirates' true cleverness went far beyond mere pilfering methods. It was about building a crew that operated seamlessly, creating systems that transformed their smaller numbers into a real strength. Their initial smart strategy was to specialize. Each crew member had a particular role during assaults on larger ships. Some were skilled marksmen dedicated to eliminating enemy officers, while others excelled at slicing rigging to hinder the progress of bigger vessels. A recovered logbook from a pirate ship reveals they even had crew members whose sole task was to analyze the vulnerabilities of various large vessels. This strategic choice significantly contributed to their victories over bigger ships. Unlike naval crews that blindly obeyed orders, pirate crews debated and voted on strategies for attacking big targets. This ensured every assault reflected the input of the whole crew. A French naval report lamented that pirates appeared to think as a single unit during attacks, while larger ships often struggled with disorder among their ranks. Their reward system was tailored to promote daring moves against larger enemies. Extra shares went to the first person to identify a weakness in a big ship's defenses. The first on a larger vessel received additional pay. They even offered rewards to crew members who devised clever methods to defeat bigger ships. Henry Morgan's crew once decided to award their carpenter 3 additional shares for creating a new kind of grappling hook that improved their ability to latch onto tall shipsides. Pirates concentrated mostly on tactics for taking on bigger ships. New recruits spent weeks studying the vulnerabilities of various vessel types. They trained in coordinated assaults, where small teams could outmaneuver and overpower larger gun crews. The well-known pirate Blackbeard had his crew practice boarding tactics on their own ship, using various heights to mimic boarding larger ships. Pirate kept meticulous records of what was effective against ships of different sizes. They examined each win and loss against bigger opponents, building an expanding collection of effective strategies. A recovered pirate journal contained diagrams highlighting specific weak spots on various large ships, along with notes on successful assaults. Their rules and structure focused entirely on gaining the upper hand against larger foes. Fighting among crew members was strictly banned since they needed everyone at their best to take on bigger ships. Gambling was prohibited because they needed their crews to stay alert and well-rested. One pirate captain had a rule that anyone caught drunk during an attack on a big ship would be abandoned at the next port. Sharing information was vital to their success. Pirates assembled networks to gather intel on the vulnerabilities of various large ships. They offered hefty sums for information about crew numbers, weapon placements, and defensive strategies on bigger vessels. Some crews even had ex-naval officers on board, teaching them the usual countermeasures that large ships deployed against pirates. But their biggest advantage was their unity. When they attacked a vessel 3 times their size, each crew member knew exactly what to do and had full confidence in their comrades. They battled as a seamless, coordinated team against bigger, more disorganized enemies. A naval officer once noted that battling pirates was akin to facing a single skilled fighter rather than a bunch of scattered opponents. These insights into teamwork and coordination would resonate through history, illustrating how small or well-structured forces could outperform much larger adversaries. They could bring down even the mightiest ships at sea. Too exhausted to resist much, but even their cleverest tricks were only the beginning.